Negative emotions are the opiates of the masses, washing through us and taking away rationality and pointing us towards targets of hate and derision. We forget that there's a human that we're talking about, a person on the other side of the screen, on the other side of the world, on the other side of the hate mob, who's feeling emotions just like us. Capitalism wants us to just be machines, don't think about that, do nothing but work and consume. And emotions are only useful so long as you can harness them for consumption. Now, obviously, negative emotions are not a product of capitalism. That would be an absurd argument to make, and I'm not making that argument. But negative emotions are very much a useful tool to get quick results, regardless of the long term effects. There's stuff like Common Cause and other like research on positive emotions and positive motivators that are very much useful for longer term stuff and getting durable, lasting change. But under capitalism, we're all about the short term profit, aren't we? We've got to keep people occupied with fighting each other, with consuming the right media and canceling the wrong media, with following the right people on social media and canceling the wrong people, so that we just keep browsing and seeing ads and consuming, and then consume some more, and consume some more. And not with any meaningful change or real connection resulting out of this. I've talked a lot about late stage capitalism and the individualization and dissolving of community, etc. So let's do things differently this time. In January 2020, a woman published a short story titled I Sexually Identify as an Attack Helicopter in a sci fi magazine online. It was a biting commentary on the weaponization of gender, being quite transparent about, the weaponization because it was set in a not too distant future where the US military forcibly reassigns people to different genders based on their tactical role, be it attack helicopter or attack helicopter pilot. This kind of commentary could only have come from someone that is intimately familiar with gender and navigating the experience of, well, understanding that gender is more than just what's in your pants, to put it frankly, and understanding the trans experience quite deeply based on her description of gender dysphoria, be it a little bit tongue in cheek, where it's dysphoria over not actually being an attack helicopter despite being uh, assigned attack helicopter and military, I guess. But people online didn't see it this way. They didn't read the very obvious commentary. They didn't see that. They just found stuff to hate. They saw transphobia in the title. They saw transphobia in suggesting that gender might be weaponizable, that it might be malleable. They saw harm being done to some nebulous someone somewhere, even if that person was not, really existing. And it's easy to just get swept away in the mob and trust that someone must know what transphobia really is. And transphobia is clearly when someone reappropriates a transphobic meme and expands it out into a biting criticism of the weaponization of gender. But that would be too easy to recognize, wouldn't it? In June 2023, an animated movie called SpiderMan Across the Spider-Verse was released. The story is of a teen who has to hide part of herself from the people she loves and ends up going on a journey across the multiverse with new friends and meeting up with old friends who understand what it's like and what she's been going through after being initially rejected by her dad. The story then reaches a crescendo where she comes out to her dad again, and he finally comes around to accepting all of her. For anyone queer, uh, you understand what I did there, but for everyone else, I just described the outline of Gwen's character arc in Across the Spider-Verse in a way that makes the subtext of queerness very, very explicit. And because I got at least 3 essays in my comments when I did that little ramble in my previous video, I am doing what's called interpreting the text of the media, because apparently seeing the obvious parallels to queerness in Gwen's story, or listening to the queer people that are seeing these obvious parallels in their reading of the text, some people, namely the Twitter mob, or well, people across the social media verse, are seeing people as sullying their good, clean, cishet comics superhero flick with the icky queerness, and react with anger and disgust, feeling as if they've been harmed by the association of a successful piece of media with some semblance of nebulous wokeness. For both stories, people are blinded by hate in their readings of media and find things to be outraged at instead of taking a kind of lens to both the media and to other people. In discussion of Isabel Fall's attack helicopter short story, I came across the concept of reparative readings for media criticism. So, the originator of reparative reading, Eve Kosofsky Sedgwick, lays out this idea that critique has become synonymous with paranoia, with seeking out the bad in a work to dismantle it, instead of something more constructive and working towards a reparative reading that builds something out of the positives and is constructive towards the negatives too. And if you know me, you'll know that this would immediately resonate with me. The idea that we should move towards a more loving way of engaging with media instead of paranoid search for things to hate and things to pick apart is exactly the kind of shit I'm about. Like, yes, I like tearing apart things, but I love doing it in a way that's about understanding and building off of that rather than saying, nope, this is problematic, nope, that's problematic, nope, everything's problematic. And in relation to this sort of idea, author Lee Mandello has suggested that assuming that any harm we find in a piece of media, or in general, is universal, is self-centered and selfish as hell. Like, Guaida's social context obviously exists, but even as a member of a minority, you can't always decide for everyone what's right or wrong because within a group, not everyone always agrees. Like, for example, in the disability activism community, some people are very much about person first language and about people with disabilities, and other people are all about adjective for, I don't remember what it's called, but disabled people, autistic people, etc., that kind of language. Personally, as someone that's all but diagnosed as being on the spectrum, I prefer the latter. But some other people might prefer the former. They might prefer people with autism. And that's okay. Because no one person is the arbiter. No one person can be the arbiter of what is or isn't harmful or offensive to a community, or the spokesperson for a whole group uncritically, no matter what people seem to believe on Twitter.com or seem to push upon people in wider society. So, where does that leave us? As I am liable to harp on about, we should always try to embody love in this world. We're all different people, and disgust, fear, hate, and the multitude of negative emotions against people's experiences that don't quite match our own is not a good position to take unless you're some ranty evangelical preacher from Jefferson City, Missouri. And I feel like most people don't want to be Reverend Scammer McScamson from Missouri. Harm is obviously something that people feel and something that people do to each other. And I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, but we should be cognizant of what we're doing about that harm and whether, in search of trying to prevent harm, we instead silence people's stories that are genuine and earnest, like Isabel Fall, who was violently pushed back in the closet. Do we want to be doing that? Or do we want to be extending a reparative lens, a loving lens towards media, especially when it's media that represents us, media that's written to show a mirror of us, be it I sexually identify as an attack helicopter, or the subtext in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And I think that we should always be extending that love towards each other first, instead of pitchforks. and then bringing our fists up only when we've got no other option. And sometimes we don't have any other options, and that's okay, because self-defense is self-defense. And is that maybe Christian of me to say? Or am I taking a reparative reading of the Christian Bible? Either way, be love. Even the tiniest spark of love can do more than all the hate in the world, even if it doesn't always feel like it, even if it's hard. Being generous and respectful of other people will always be more powerful than tearing people down.